The Behemoth Brewing Company presents the Department of Conversation with Pat Brittington. Behemoth, give me something hoppy.
And it is a huge congratulations and welcome to the show, Phil Bell, aka DJ Sir-vere. Phil, good morning to you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Kia ora, bro. Awesome.
I was thinking about it yesterday. Thinking about you as Phil Bell kind of feels a little bit like thinking about one of my teachers and using their first name. You know, it's like Mr. Smith, and then you meet them as an adult and they're like, "Oh, call me Terry." You know, no, I can't do that. You know, I can't. Sorry, dude. I know you're a real human being, but you've been Mr. Smith to me the whole time. So it is a little bit the same thinking about Phil Bell, DJ Sir-vere. It's when you're in public and stuff. What do people call you generally? What do fans call you?
Severe, I guess. My mum's the only one who calls me Philip, you know, when I'm in trouble.
We've got you on today to talk about all sorts of stuff. I'm very excited about the conversation. People who listen to my podcast know that kind of hip-hop and R&B, hip-hop more particular, gangster rap from back in the 80s is something that's a huge part of my formative years. So you were like, this is a legendary, you know, conversation for me to have. So thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if when you've got a pseudonym, a stage name like that, is it something you think about kind of making permanent? Like you've released a podcast on Aotearoa Hip Hop, which we're going to talk about through this period, which is exciting. Is there ever a thought that you're not going to actually use Phil Bell at all through any of that stage? Just use Sir-vere or DJ Sir-vere?
Yeah, I mean, having a pseudonym or a stage name is funny to me because I only did that out of necessity because my original stage name was so terrible that I was forced to change it within 24 hours. So I called on my friends to help me get this new one. So I was like, it was made out of necessity. Philip Bell, you shouldn't really hear that name because I think people don't even know who that is. And in fact, just it's funny you should ask that question because at the end of the podcast, there's a credit roll, and in the credit roll it says narrated by Philip Bell, and I was like, people are not gonna. People know me as Sir-vere, so it's kind of like stage names are made from my experience are from being forced to use them.
Right.
But then it's like a brand; they stick, right? I can't just walk away from it. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't even know how many people watching this right now even know my name is Philip Bell. Seriously,
yeah,
I don't.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I was one of those people up until a couple of weeks ago. You know, I'm like, oh, that's Sir-vere's first name. Does it? I was thinking, as you were saying when you were listening to the credits, I was thinking, did you go, who's Philip Bell? No, you obviously didn't think that, but because I'm Pat, right? My family calls me Patty because it's Irish background. So anyone who's known me since knee high calls me Patty. So like I am with, you know, I meet an aunt now who's now in their 70s or 80s, and they call me Pat or Patrick. I'm like, well, who the fuck are you talking to? It's like, you call me, my name is Patty to you. It's like, and then if someone calls me Patrick, I have these three groups of people. Pat, the people who know me, my friends and stuff. Patty is family, and Patrick is typically people who don't know me very well. Typically, there's a few people who call me Patrick. You know, and it's a relational thing. But typically, Patrick is people like I get a phone call, is this Patrick Britton? And I'm like, okay, so this is someone I don't know. You must feel the same a bit about Phil. I mean, if people call you Phil,
if you call me Philip, you clearly don't know me because like none of my friends. But like I said, my mother calls me Philip when I'm in trouble. So yeah, no, that's 100% the truth for sure.
Yeah, that's weird, eh? It's the pseudonym thing. That culture you came up through in the 1980s, and I read your bio and it said been in the industry for 35 years. So that's 86.
Yeah,
is that about right for when you started off and you started off in the hip hop scene in Auckland? I listened to your first podcast. Did you realize that you were considered the first episode considered West Coast by the guys in Wellington? And Wellington were the guys considering themselves the authentic hip hop crews?
No, I definitely did not. You know what's funny too is that although I consider myself to be part of the first wave because of my age, there's a lot of misconceptions that were cleared up or I was confronted with during the process of recording that I had no idea about. Like that whole conversation about Auckland, and for people who haven't listened, you'll discover this, is that Wellington people considered us West Coasters because of the climate and the way that we lived up here. That was brand new to me. Plus, you know, the other really funny thing that you'll find out later in the piece is that there was this war between Wellington and Auckland that the Aucklanders considered. Wellingtonians didn't even think about it. So it's funny how we thought, oh, this was going on. And then I remember talking to Flows from the Foot Soldiers, and he's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not a thing. But it really was a thing, like you can have these massive misconceptions about your origins. You have no idea about until you actually talk to them. That's the reason I even got into this whole podcast thing. It's like normally a podcast will take the duration of this call. This one's taken me 3 years because of COVID. Wow. And also some people have been hard to find, You really got to do your you know about that. Due diligence is everything.
Yeah, and then when you even get due diligence, there's often several gatekeepers to get through as well, and then it goes from there on. And
the stories are different too, by the way.
yeah, totally. I was thinking it's a little bit. I heard a story once about how I don't know if you know this, but in 1966 Football World Cup, England versus Germany. The English fans still have this massive angst against Germany for beating them in that. But in Germany, they're like their biggest rivals has always been Holland. And it's when they lose to the Dutch that they consider to be their big games. So the English fans are really angsty still 50 years later about losing to Germany. And Germany is like, oh, I don't even remember that World Cup. Sounds like a similar sort of vibe between you guys in Auckland. You guys in Wellington.
That is exactly what it is, which is ironic because I sit here today talking to you from Wellington.
Oh, is that home now?
Yeah. I've been living in Wellington for a few years. Yep. But home is Hamilton. I'm from the Waikato. Yeah.
Right. Hey, well, listen, we've been talking about podcasts. We've said it 4 or 5 times. So let's just show people. We've got the actual the trailer here for us. Let's just play it for people who are watching. They'll see it. If they're just listening to the podcast, they'll hear it. This is your podcast, which is getting released on the 19th of November. So just a couple of days away.
Hey, I'm Philip Bell, aka DJ Sir-vere, artist, hip hop fan, podcast addict. I was lucky enough to be part of hip hop culture in New Zealand since the start. This podcast is the only timeline of hip hop music in Aotearoa from its inception.
How bizarre. That's the dream. He's sold more records than I ever will.
Upper Hut Posse changed the game locally. They took the hip hop art form and made it Aotearoa.
I've flown around the world to talk to the people that were there when it happened.
When the guy comes over to me, he's like, hey, Stevie Wonder just showed up and he's asking for you.
That was the peak of Supergroove mania. It's the closest thing to Beatlemania I think I've ever witnessed in New Zealand. They were huge.
And to the people that are making it happen.
We had the centre of the Rolling Stones. They were going to be the biggest thing in the world. It's all happening here in New Zealand.
I had to grab the turnies, mix it, and run the gauntlet while being fucking hit.
This is Aotearoa Hip Hop. The music, the people, the history. Podcast coming November 19th.
Woo! Yeah, baby. So there you go, on Rova. So people who don't know what Rova is, it used to be a part of the MediaWorks team that was TV3 and the radio stations, which is now separated. The TV stations now belong to Discovery. And is it still called MediaWorks for the radio stations? Is that still the grouping?
MediaWorks Radio, and then Rova is the delivery platform for all the on-air stuff and for podcasts. So yeah, it'll be on there first. Yeah.
So 19th, that's Friday, is it? From memory, Friday the 19th? Am I right with that? Yep. Yeah, Friday the 19th. So that's going to be huge. And is it going to be the full season dumped in one hit, or are you going to do weekly releases?
It's the first 6 episodes. So, conceivably it's a lot. It's a lot. But the first 6 episodes are going to drop on Friday. Yeah.
It's when you say it's a lot, though, it's not a hard listen. Like I got given the first 2 eps, and I listened to the first one, and it breezed by. It's under an hour. I'm not sure if they're all the same length. Obviously, one of the beauties of podcasting is they don't need to be, particular length. But it was a really easy listen, and the production, like this little pissant thing I'm doing right now, where we're just kind of hanging out and chatting, zero production value. But the production value in it, and I said this to you before we started, and I actually sent an email through to one of the guys who made it, Asher, and asked, is there video that goes with this? Because I'm hearing the conversations and I'm wanting to see them as well. And I think that just speaks to the quality of the production of it. It's like real podcasting, not like this plaything we do in our basement, studios.
well, the big contributing factor to that is Grant Brody. So, Grant to most people is you've never heard the name before, but in the radio realm, he's like a god. So I've been working with Grant for years in my role at MyFM. And Grant is just sometimes you meet people and they're just incredible at what they do. I liken it to Scribe when I first met Scribe. and just his ability to do whatever these rappers do. Is this just this X factor? And Grant's got that X factor. Plus, by the way, he's got a wall full of awards. So he's been doing this for years. The reason it sounds so dynamic and amazing is because of him. You know, we could have a great story laid out with a great script, but whatever he's doing is it's unique. So the reason it sounds that good is him, and also to Martin Pepperell who helped. Well, he scripted it. Now, to be real honest with you, when I first started this project, which was nearly 3 years ago, I was no. I'll tell you. We had a meeting in Onehunga with myself, Martin Pepperell, who wrote the podcast, Dei Hamo, Sunny Sagala, and oh gosh, I forgot his name, Gareth Shute, who wrote the Aotearoa Hip Hop book. So that was just a brainstorming session. So we sat down and we just shot the shit, just wrote some stuff down. And I remember sitting there going, there's no fucking way we can tell the story. I'll be brutally honest with you. And I remember saying to Martin afterwards, like, I don't know how you tell the story. There's so much to it. By this time, by the way, I've been listening to podcasts religiously for about, I don't know, 7-8 years. I've been listening to them. And then about 5 years ago, I got really deep. I mean, I still am. Like, that's what I listen to as podcasts, and the radio station, of course. And then I was just saying to Grant, I just don't know how this works. I don't know how the fuck this translate to what we want to achieve. And Martin's just like, it's going to be all right, man. It's going to be all right. So it's taken over when it says over 100 interviews, I mean it's been over 100 interviews. And then the collation of all those bits and pieces is fucking mind-blowing to get to where we are now. So the combination of Martin as a great writer, me in the background yelling and screaming, and Grant as a producer, that's where you got to where we are today. So I'm very proud of it, because the first episode, you know, because you get one chance, right? Your best forward, and I'm real happy with that, because it's a hard story to tell, man. Like, there's so much information that's like, people that are walking into this thing, they go, oh, Aotearoa Hip Hop, Scribe, Shay Fu, like, you've got no fucking idea. You got no fucking idea.
Yeah. Well, I was going to speak to that as well, because I have to say, 1986, the first album, literally the first album I ever purchased, I think I bought it in 87 though, but it came out in 96, was Licensed to Ill by the Beastie Boys. So that was the first album I ever purchased. And I've shared this a couple of times on this podcast as well. One of my little claims to fame around the world is Straight Outta Compton, bought from Sounds in Queen Street, 1988. Still have the album sitting right there. So that was my formative years. This is my claim to fame. My claim to fame is one of the people that's liked this post is Dr. Dre's son. So that's my claim. There we go. Curtis Young there. He liked my post. So I try and get credit off other people doing things near me. So
hey, you haven't even followed him back, man. Follow him back, bro.
He didn't follow me. He just liked it, and I thought that's my claim to fame. So, but the thing that I realized whilst listening to the podcast is how much I loved hip hop, and also I guess watching Dawn Raid, the documentary as well, and how little I knew about the New Zealand scene, even though there was a New Zealand scene going on around me. And it speaks to how it was kind of played down and not commercialized, I think, because what was commercialized more was the international stuff. So that's the things that I was getting into. And then listening to your podcast, episode 1 and 2, and also watching, Oscar's documentary, you're like, gosh, I remember those Dawn Raid guys at the Aotearoa flea markets. I grew up in Hillsborough, which is just across the road from Mangere. So that was sort of my hood. So I remember being at the Aotearoa flea markets and seeing the t-shirts being sold and stuff. But as a kid in that era, somehow either it was, maybe it was me and my group, or I think maybe more it was the non-commercialization of the hip hop world in those eras within New Zealand. I didn't know as much about the New Zealand hip hop scene as I did about the international hip hop, and obviously harder into the rap and gangster rap scene coming from offshore.
Well, that's not surprising, because let's not forget that if you bought the NWA album, do you really know about the origins of gangster rap in America? Do you really? I mean, who kind of does? Like, when your experience starts when you start. Like
Yeah.
if you started, if
Yeah.
say for instance, little baby started for a 14-year-old now. Do you really know about NWA? Do you really know about School Lee from Philly? Do you really know about like so? It's each to their own, really. I'm not surprised by that. Plus, there is an unsung hero in this story, and that's TP. So TP is the springboard for everything. And how many people actually know about TP? Mostly hardly anybody. Everyone from fucking Wellington knows about TP because he's a fucking hero. Now, the beauty of it is he's such an incredible character, such an awesome person, that he's so engaging when you talk to him because he was really just doing it. So he's the godfather, he's the pioneer. But who knew? Like nobody knew. That's why we made the fucking podcast, is to put these people into their rightful places. Going, he's the guy.
Nobody knew. I didn't know, but everyone's heard him because I tell you what. I think it was episode 1. You know what I'm going to play?
Yeah.
Episode 1.
Everybody ready?
When this played in your podcast, I still knew it word for word. It's what we call homogenizing green stripe caps. Tells you that is me lean body with no fat. So we don't know about him, but his influence, I think, for like me, kids of the 80s, was everywhere.
Yeah. And look, you know what? You don't have to care about his story. This is the interesting part of it, is that you don't have to actually care, but it's good to be aware of it. Like, because I can hear it now. Some people going, well, that was fucking 40 years. That's got no relevance to me. I understand that. But that's why I really, with regard to this podcast, people go, what is it? I'm like, it's a museum piece. Like I remember talking to Martin going, this piece of work that we're doing is not a fucking podcast. It goes into a virtual museum and sits there. So as a result, we had to treat it that way. So I wasn't, because lots of people say to me, oh, when's the Scribe episode coming? It's not right. This is not what this is. This is a documentation from beginning to, well, it's not to the end, because it's by the way, we had to call it too, because if you put something into a museum, you don't update it every fucking week or month or year. It's got an end date. I won't tell you when that is, because that's for you to discover as you go. But as a result, every part of it kind of needs to be covered. Will we cover everything? It's impossible. Are we going to miss a couple of things? Probably, but we've tried not to. But things like this, I feel, is really important. And the fact that you know that milk ads means you're old bastard like me.
like it played on the podcast word for word, I knew and sung along with it. What it feels like to me is an anthology. It's taking the segment. It's like an anthology in the old days was a book about everything that happened in that era. It feels like it's that. And I was going to say, you said you did over 100 interviews. Does that mean 100 interviews for this series, or is there a second series already being planned, and some of the interviews going through to there as well?
So we've conducted over 100, me and Martin collectively, because I couldn't have done it myself. And some of them were done in COVID time. So our intention was to do them all in person. It was literally impossible after March last year.
Yep.
But that's for the whole lot. So I've actually recorded up to episode 10. There may be more than that, maybe less. I don't know. I can't call it. We haven't quite finished it, although I know how it ends. I know how the podcast ends. Me and Martin both know how it ends. But that's next year, bro.
So the first 6 get dropped on the 19th, and then there's at least 4 more to come, maybe a couple more, kind of treated like a series 2?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it'd be the same amount. It kind of depends. It's kind of hard because we had to pick this. Like I said to you, this is a museum document. It's like a piece of history, but you kind of have to call it. I think we've finally managed to call it so we can write to the calling date.
Right.
Yeah. So we're at that moment now, but that's working behind the scenes while these ones have been finished. Yeah.
I mean, that does make sense though, doesn't it? Because you can't put out a podcast that's up till the hip hop scene that finished yesterday, whether the calling it is a week ago, a month ago, or 5 years ago. But speaking of the hip hop scene yesterday, maybe, as you say, because I'm an old bastard now, and I am also addicted to podcasts, and the radio plays less of a part in my life these days. So this is probably with my rose-tinted old man glasses looking back. It feels like the hip hop scene was a lot healthier between sort of the late 80s, 90 and let's say 2010. Am I wrong? Is that perception wrong? Is it as strong in New Zealand as ever, or is there a changing tide?
It's a great question. Really great question. Look, everything it's like everything's like the ocean. There's big waves, there's little waves, there's constant movement. If you it depends who you are. If you're a casual consumer, you would go, wow, there's not too much happening with hip hop in Aotearoa right now. If you're deep in the thick of it, like I am, there's lots of shit happening.
Yeah,
there always is. If you talk to someone in the punk scene, like, man, there's not much happening in the punk scene at the moment. You talk to someone in the punk scene, like, nah, there's fucking heaps of shit happening in the punk scene. You know what I mean? Like, it depends where you sit in the landscape. Commercially, yeah, it's a little quiet. Am I seeing lots of movement at the early end? Because let's not forget too, is like superstars aren't made overnight. Not really. People go, oh, you can get Spotify famous. Yeah, you can, but it's shot in the dark. So I think it's healthy. I think that there's lots of exciting new talent, but you may not have heard of them because they're not the front and center. I do think, without giving anything away, Tom Scott talks to this in later episodes that you won't hear yet. And he sums it up beautifully because he's really excited about the future, and so am I. But there's just nothing, because let's not forget, man, like when we get to 2004, which we don't get to in episode 1 through 6, the Hip Hop Summit is the absolute peak. Like, you're not going to get that now. Like, Scribe was #1 single and album at the same time. Like, that's very lofty heights. Yeah. We don't currently have a Scribe in our scene. We don't currently, we may have a Tupac in the scene at the moment, and Little Baby, possibly, maybe. But sometimes having a superstar as a pin around a scene helps create momentum. I don't personally think we currently have that in Aotearoa. We have some good people, but not one of those. So sometimes that dictates how big the waves are of the ocean. You know what I mean?
Are there people on the horizon, like you talk about a superstar and a pin, and I think about Martin Nonu, funnily enough, because when he came into the All Blacks, he was a pretty good second five, but he grew into being the best second five in the world. So he became that pin. I'm not saying for rugby, but the positional thing, he became the best in the world. Do you see people out in the industry at the moment who could be that pin in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now?
I have no idea. Yeah, I know what you mean about Martin Nonu, because I met him last year and I was so starstruck. Oh my gosh. He knew it too, and he's like, "Ooh, just relax." Like, oh my gosh. I don't know.
But he grew into that, and I'm wondering in the scene, can you see people who are growing into things at the moment?
No, I can't call it. I can't call it because you just don't know. Like, there's this kid called Gino. He's really, really great, but he's brand new in the game. Church and AP are great, but they're only a few years in the game and haven't had a hit lately. But does it matter? I don't think so. Like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't. Yeah. You can't. I don't. I'm not a big fan of calling it because I've been wrong before. Here's a classic example, and I talk about it in the podcast. I didn't think much of change when I first heard it. Not really. I was just like, I remember Kirk played it to me, and I don't feel bad about this. I've told Daryl and Shay individually, and I'm like, when Kirk Harding played it to me, I was like, and Kirk's like, nah, bro, like this is the shit, and I was like, and I was so fucking wrong, like the most wrong you could ever be, because it went on to break records. So what I'm trying to say is, am I seeing that? I don't know, but you just don't know. You don't. All you can do is support. So I'm real big on support. I spoke at a Maori conference in Wanganui on the weekend, and I was all about that. I'm like, how many people are asking me what they think of these songs? How many people are coming to me for advice? Not that many. Like, people are so they're too proud, or they want to make it on their own. That's totally fine. But we are here to support each other. It's really, really, I believe it's very, very important.
You missed a perfect opportunity there for a very good gag, but obviously you're a professional, and I'm a junk ex-DJ, because you said, how many come in? Not too many. You could have said if any, and that would have fitted into the genre perfectly. But I know you're not as corny as that. I'm excited to hear that you say goes to 2004, but obviously it's not the end of it, because I think about I think Swing was 07. So that goes to show that there's more story to tell. You know,
Oh, it goes way past that, mate. It goes way past.
Yeah. So,
look, here's the deal. One thing I discovered in this podcast is how great Tom Scott is. He's going to hate this when he hears this, but Tom Scott is possibly the most successful New Zealand rapper of all time. And the reason I say that, people are going to be like, "What?" You think about how long he's been around, like from his early homebrew days, being an idiot, to making the Avantdale album, and then making another one. Tell me who else has been around for that long? I mean, Scribe, yep, maybe, but he's been away for a while. Like Tom has consistently been a major player. David Dallas for sure, but Dave has been kind of gone for a while. So Tom is an amazing human being, amazing artist. Continues to be. I think that should speak to how long the distance that this podcast covers. He's an amazing man. Like, you want to, if anyone's ever really overlooked Tom, you should stop right now and go back and fully appreciate what he's achieved in the music industry here. He's fucking incredible.
It was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. You just talked about longevity. It's there aren't many. I won't say it. I nearly did. I won't say it. I won't imply you should say it. And I think about Scribe, and obviously Scribe hit some hard times at some point. But I guess what I hear you saying as well is people like me who, even though I love music. People say to me now, "What's your musical taste?" Now it's quite eclectic, and I've come back to I like music with a beat. You know, if it's got a beat, I can get into it. But it all started with hip hop, But I have to probably say I wasn't kind of ensconced in the culture or the world. It was something that I enjoyed and appreciated, maybe from afar, if I'm being absolutely honest. So I'm not someone who knows what Scribe's up to today, if anything, because he's not publicly visible. But I also, so from my perspective, I look at some of these guys and think, where are they? What are they up to now? What are they doing? And I know Scribe hit some hard times, and it seems that perhaps there's been a few of them, and like I said, not to reference another piece of content when we're talking about your podcast, but the Dawn Raid documentary kind of shows that as well, shows hitting these hard times and making some decisional mistakes. Other than like Shay Fu, because obviously he started with Super Groove when he was 16 or whatever, people who have been in the industry as long as you and sort of been, I don't want to say relevant because that's quite a patronizing term, but you know, the New Zealand culture that the New Zealand culture has been aware of. Who are the big ones other than Shay Fu? But even Shay Fu, who I love to bits. I mean, I haven't seen him in the last couple of years. You know, is it a hip hop thing? Is it a New Zealand music industry thing? Is it we're growing up and it's time to have kids so we can't tour? 40 weekends a year thing. What happens?
There's a couple things. First of all, Scribe is the most important New Zealand rapper of all time. That is not. I won't have a conversation about that. Like, I liken it to the Tupac conversation. So people always go, "Oh, who's the greatest rapper of all time?" Well, the greatest rapper of all time is whoever you fucking think it is. So for me personally, it's Big L. He's the greatest rapper of all time. In that conversation, there's Nas, Notorious B.I.G., Tupac. Who's the most important rapper of all time? You had to say Tupac. Now, the reason you say that is because he was culturally relevant. He was a fucking activist. He was also a bit of a dirty bastard. He swore a lot. He started a lot of beef. He was compelling. Like, he was everything. So when we talk about the most important rapper of all time, you have to think Tupac. You really do. Of course, there's arguments for everything around that. I get it. But with Scribe, no one kicked the door down like he did. I'm sorry that he did not. IMC definitely had international success that we've never seen before and may never see again. But he didn't kick down the door like he's just a kid from Christchurch, man, who had an incredible talent, which we saw early on, did all this amazing shit. And people say, "Oh, he fell on hard times." Everyone falls on fucking hard times. Most people that you meet fall on hard times early in their lives. Or like, "Oh, when I was 15 through 18, I had a really hard time." Scribe's had a hard time later on. It's no big fucking deal.
Yeah,
Does not tarnish his historical value or his importance. That's why you will hear me say in the podcast multiple occasions, he's the most important, because he fucking is. He is the most important because he's the most relevant. He's the most successful. He is so incredibly skilled and still is. He's making new music. He's got a documentary coming out soon. He's got a new album. For me, he's inherited. You can't fuck with him of all time. The other important people I think that we identify, and then I really value personally is TP. Like if we don't have the scene that we have now without TP, most people won't know him. Sheffield is incredibly important. The Dawn Ray guys are extremely important in the genesis of what happened later on. I think Mareko pops his head up on multiple occasions as incredible talent. DLT is hugely important. Now, these are the people that will become relevant to, people across time, because Fulfui Mana plays a major role. He's often overlooked, which really pisses me off. And that's why I really love the way that we present him later in the series. David Dallas is important. David Dallas is important in episode 1, which but I don't want to give any spoilers away. David Dallas is important. Tom Scott is incredibly important. So there are all these players. We all have our place. Naturally, there's others. There's Cosmo from Wellington, Flows. I could go on for hours. But I think that was an intention for us. It was intentional for the podcast to go, let's give people their flowers while they're here. Noriega says it all the time in Drink Champs. He interviewed Kanye recently, and he's like, I want you to give you your flowers while you're here, because people often get their flowers after they're gone. Hone Ngata, DJ Professor, beautiful human being, passed away a year or so ago. We should have given him his flowers while he was here, but he was just an integral part of what we do. So that's a part of what this podcast is give people the credit and due now. Very important.
Nice. It makes me kind of think, it's like a love letter to hip hop, and a love letter to those people who are important within that culture and who made what it is today.
Agreed. That's exactly what it is.
So often in movements or within organizations, when something is new and it starts with young people. Like if you think back to those 80s and 90s, I mean, were there any 40-year-olds rapping and being involved in hip hop scene? There might have been one or two, but primarily and predominantly, I imagine it would have been teenagers through people in their early 20s, sort of thing. Is there any danger once a movement, and in this case, the movement would be the style of music, so the hip hop scene, having a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds around now who are still perhaps heavily involved and not kind of tossing the keys to the 16 to 25-year-olds to find the new movement? When it's fresh, the young people have to lead because there's no one else. Is there a danger that there are some young people at the moment in the scene, this could be in life, this question, who aren't leading because others are around still with those reins?
Depends how cool the old people are, eh? Literally. And I'm dead serious. Like, imagine if I was a real asshole and try to block all the new DJs, all the new MCs, or all that sort of thing. Imagine that, but I'm not. Like it's up to people like me and DJ Raw to lead the way. Like it's really important. Plus, the only way you stay relevant is by being that person, right? So Raw's a great example. So Raw is the most decorated DJ in Aotearoa history, and he's a fucking amazing human being. Now he's got a DJ school in Wellington where he is seeding the seeds of bringing through all these new DJs. Like if you're talking about passing the torch, that is exactly what he's doing. He's taking his skill set, passing it on to the next way. I always say this to his face all the time because it's so important. Show me someone else is doing that shit. That's why when Professor passed and I say one of a kind and everyone goes, oh, people always say that, is no, he was one of a kind. Tell me another fucking pro Maori, pro activist, pro DJ in our community. There's no one. He's that guy. Raw's that guy too. Show me someone else who's been to the world champs like 4 times.
Yeah.
Who's still currently teaching people how to DJ. I go to his DJ school once a year and talk to all the students. I did it a couple of weeks ago. He's still doing it. So how do I stay relevant? It's because I love all the new music. You hear old people go, oh my God, all this new music is fucking rubbish. No, like I'm sorry, but I like it. That's so I'm relevant because I'm moving with the audience and I don't block anybody. Scene blockers are the worst. I'm not seeing any really in the community now. Plus, to be honest, hip hop is street music, man. The streets dictate what hip hop. So people go, oh, there's so much jewelry and money involved. Well, that's what the streets want to do, bro. Like, sorry,
Yeah.
you know, you may not like that about that's the dynamic of hip hop in 20, but you can't stop it. So just get over it. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're like,
totally.
man, I listen to all this double time rapping, a little baby talking about this, that, and the other. Okay, well, don't listen to it because that's what everyone else is listening to it. I remember when Nelly came along. When Nelly came along, and I put Nelly on Major Flavors 1, heaps of people came at me. They're like, I can't believe you put that song on your mixtape. Now they look back on it and go, oh, that song mixes so well. Like, I don't remember. You didn't say that shit when I put it on there. So it's kind of like, I'm not saying to be submissive to what you like and don't like. If you don't like it, that's cool. Just walk away from it. But I am saying that you're 100% correct. Kids are the life and blood of hip hop, and kids rappers in Aotearoa nowadays are not making true school hip hop shit. You know, Chooch and AP when they made Ready or Not, it's a new school song. Gino makes new school shit. Like, just get over it and move on. That's how I feel about it. And I know lots of old school people going, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're saying this shit." Well, that's why you're not here. It's going that way, and it's a move. Like it's an actual movement. That's why I go. I go to Rolling Loud because I love Rolling Loud, and people are like, "You're too old to go to Rolling Loud." No, I'm not, because I love the music. That's it. It's a movement. Like, either get on board or get the fuck out of the way, and I'm all about it.
There's a song once that said "Move, bitch, get out the way." I can't quite remember the exact words, but so basically, see, you are saying on some levels that the young people are leading it, because you're saying relevant with their style and what they're doing. So that sort of echoes that thing as not entirely what it would have been in '86, because there wouldn't have been the old guys following along, but it sounds like that the young people, the people in the streets, the people who are on that level are still deciding what is the culturally best / most appropriate hip hop at the moment.
Absolutely, and it will continue to be that. It's not dissimilar from punk rock. You know, you can't grow old, have children, have a mortgage, and have the same fuck you attitude that you had when you can, but it's a little bit contradictory, is it not? To be like that. I'm not saying that that's what punk is. I'm just saying to you, because I go to Dick Move gigs, and Dick Move are fucking everything to me. They're like, so just by the way, I'm like you, I've got a very diverse taste. Dick Move are my favorite New Zealand band. Like, they are just fucking love them. Them and Beast Wars. I'm a huge Beast Wars fan. You know, I go to pick up their new vinyl pressings from their house. I love those dudes to death. So like, it depends where you sit in the landscape of it. If you don't like what Dick Move does or what they say, don't listen to their music and don't go to their gigs.
Yeah.
But if you do, then do. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like if you're going to stand on the sidelines and shout, "This isn't punk rock," well then you're not part of. Oh yeah, like they are everything to me. Like they're the best.
That's really. I was gonna ask you. It's a bit of a kind of terrible radio type style interview question, but what do you listen to outside of hip hop? And so it sounds like you're eclectic as well. Listen to if it's good music, you listen to it.
Oh man, like Dick Movers. I finally got to see. I live in Wellington now, so I keep missing them. I finally got to see them live before on lockdown, and they're just. I mean, their record is amazing. Ironically, No Noises in there too. I really love them. I do have Husker Du are a really massive influence on me. Being from Papakura in South Auckland, clearly reggae played a huge part of my life. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag. The older you get, the bigger the mixed bag becomes, I believe.
It is interesting to think about when you get older and more successful. It's harder to be, it's harder to say fuck the establishment if you're a millionaire and you become a part of the establishment. And I think about that with artists sometimes. You often hear an artist, and it doesn't matter who it is, but going like, "I don't do this for the awards," and they've got 7 Grammys sitting over their shoulder. It's a lot easier to say that when you have the awards rather than the young people who are saying it and really don't genuinely give a fuck. And it's the same for comedians. I mean, I'm involved with a lot of comedians, and I watch it and take a lot of comedy. And a lot of them will openly talk about when you become unrelatable to your audience, it's a lot harder to do comedy to your audience. And all of a sudden, if you're making millions of dollars a year and you've got a big house in the valley in Los Angeles, or you've moved to Austin, Texas, which they all seem to be doing at the moment, there is a danger of separation between the comedy that gave them that house and actually, continuing it on doing it. So, as you say, I don't think it's impossible, but certainly it gets harder.
I think that can be said for. I mean, it's definitely can be said for artists, especially rappers, because rappers are supposed to be somewhat of a reflection of your reality, and you have an entire lifetime to draw from to make your first record. Nas is a classic example. So was Scribe. So Nas made Illmatic, Scribe made The Crusader, and that encompassed their entire life up to that point. The second album is going to be the time between the first album and the second album. It's like that's a completely different set of circumstances to draw from, especially when you make one of the best albums of all time. So yeah, I absolutely understand that dynamic, but it depends how good you are. If you're really good, you'll make it work.
Do you think the current music scene is helped or hindered by the way we consume music these days? And I guess two channels for that. You know, I think about album sales, CD sales. I think about money coming in that way. I think about touring, and then I think today, but I think that can be quite localized, like a New Zealand artist reaching New Zealand. I think that now there's this access to the internet and access to international sales immediately, but obviously a lot less money per unit or per sale. But that might open up bigger opportunities internationally as well. I mean, like probably the most successful New Zealander has ever done that is probably Lord, who had all their stuff on SoundCloud to start off with. And then, you know, what was it? 10 weeks at #1 with fucking Royals in the US. Not saying that she did that because of being online, but, you know, it seems you've got a bigger marketplace, but less money per unit versus a smaller marketplace and more money per unit. Do you think one's better than the other? One's more helpful than the other? Because a lot of people complain about how music is done these days and the costs or the punitive, or sorry, the financial rewards that come with it.
It fucking is what it is, man. Like, it's funny because yeah, I think they are disadvantaged. I absolutely think so. Yeah, but fuck, it is what it is, man. Here's a couple of things that I definitely I have pretty strong opinions of. One thing is in 2020. The enabling of artists is a bit of a worry to me. So just because you can be a rapper doesn't mean you should be a rapper. But I think in 2020, you can become a rapper just like that.
Right.
Anyone can download a program to record. Anyone can download some free beats and do it. But there seems to be less and less of a filter around whether you should be or shouldn't be. So I believe everyone's been enabled. Not a bad thing at all. But when you're enabled to be an artist, you can put out music and then have literally no substance around it. It was different 20, 30 years ago because you actually had to put some work into it. Now I feel it's a bit too easy. Secondly, Spotify has been a gift and a curse because now there's just too much fucking noise. So to really drill, like every Friday as a radio programmer, I'm expected to look at New Music Fridays. It's fucking, oh my God, it's like the list this long. And to find a song out of all that is just, uncurated. So if you can make a song and put it out, it's just the choices are very difficult now. There's so much to choose from. It makes it hard to cut through. So as an artist, you're immediately at a disadvantage because Spotify drives all the stuff they want to be at the top. Which, well, I don't know if they do, but that's the chat.
Yeah.
So how do you make inroads? Well, you have to do the work around it. So maybe it's a little tougher. Maybe the payback is less for sure. For sure. I get it. I get that it's hard, but you were born when you were born. Now this is the era we're living in. Get your fucking merch game up and sell merch. Get when COVID's done its thing, get live shows. Because don't forget, I was making fucking bank with Major Flavors big time, bro. Like, don't think I wasn't, I was in my heyday. I've sold around about 250,000 CDs in my life. It was fucking awesome. And now I sell none and I can't post any mixes because they get taken down. You have to adapt, man. Like just do a better job or whatever you're doing. I know it's hard, but it is what it is, because what I hear people sitting around complaining about it, like shut the fuck up and just get on with it and do something I know that sounds a bit it's defeatist and demanding, but it just is what it is. I am a big person.
It makes me think about, it's a silly parallel, but, people always talk about the greatest ever, put your own athlete's name in here. And I was talking to Grant Fox about it to do with rugby. People talk about obviously Jordan, LeBron, all that kind of stuff. And I talked about Terry Wright, who was 80 kilos when he was soaking wet, 80 kilos sort of things. And Grant Fox just looked at me and said, yeah, but if Terry Wright was playing today, he'd have another 20 kilos of muscle on him. If Jordan was playing today, he'd shoot more threes. So it's that they were of the era and they had to play the ball that was in front of them at that time and play not by the rules literally, but by how it was played at that time. So I get that. It also, as you're talking, it also makes me think. So the entry level to become a rapper or become an artist or whatever you want to be is easier these days. You know, this mic's probably as good as a studio mic 30 years ago. You know, like a studio mic recording the Beatles 60 years ago, whatever. So there's more out there, which is good because that means more people can do it, but it's bad because it's harder to find that needle in the haystack, which is kind of what you're talking about, how much is out there. It just made me think about, and I'm not going to get the quote right, but someone once said about social media, but the problem with social media is it gave everyone the idea that their opinion matters. When not every opinion matters, but because they can now go brrr, and it goes to, you know, the internet, everyone all of a sudden thinks because they can that their opinion has value and is important enough that other people should pay attention to. It's not the case.
Well, I think social media has enabled that because people have a valid opinion because we give them the validity of that. Like, so if someone says something outrageous and it does the rounds, well, we gave it the the ability to have the rounds, to do the rounds. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like it's a gift and a curse. Plus, I am of the opinion, and this is just me, that it is what it fucking is. Like, it just is what it is. So I've always been this way. I think my mother taught me this thing is just to get it done. Like, it is what it is, mate. So just get it done. So, because my dad taught me my musical lessons, and my mum was a solo mother, and I live with my mum alone. And she was just like, just get it done. Just get it fucking done. So, yes, it's difficult in 2021. Yes, there's a lot of social media chat. Yes, there's cancel culture. Yes, there's SoundCloud, there's Spotify, da-da-da-da-da. So what are we going to do? Sit around and talk about this shit for another hour? No, we're just going to, I'm fully of the opinion, just get it done. So that's always been my ethos, even back in the day when I was doing Major Flavors, when I was doing the Summit. When I was doing the Summit, like, I've got a history, if you really want to go through my history, of doing shit really fucking recklessly. I'm terrible, man. I got given the editor's job at Rip It Up and Back to Basics, had no experience. I fucking did it. Went into my FM as a program director, had no radio experience. You know, I did it and I won a fucking award for it. You know what I mean? Like, I just, it's I wouldn't recommend it. But sometimes in my head, because like I've got a couple of new jobs that I do now. Like I'm an A&R for In Music American company as a DJ liaison. Now I don't really know what I was doing when I did it. But my boss said, "Well, you're a fucking DJ. You know how to talk to people. Just go and do it." And now I've got this great job dealing with all these great DJs all around the world. So I'm a bit like, if I can just figure out one small part of it, I'll get the rest when I'm on the job. Sometimes you just got to throw yourself. That's what hip hop was about. Throw yourself into it and see what the fuck happens. If it doesn't work out, just back out of it. Be Homer Simpson and just disappear behind the hedge. it is what it is. And that aesthetic remains today. It's just that the landscape is so much different, man.
Yeah, and it's that idea of adapt, evolve, or become obsolete. I told this story just a couple of days ago. You know, there used to be a guy that used to bring ice around to put in the bottom of cupboards before there was refrigeration. Then when refrigerators turned up into houses, he either adapted or he lost his job forever because people didn't need ice delivered anymore. So you adapt, evolve, or you disappear. So I like that. Is what it is. Nice and easy.
It is, and it's the same. You can say the same thing of taxis and Uber. You know, like, I'll catch Uber because it's easier and I feel safer because it's all documented. Taxi drivers, blah, blah, blah. So, well, Uber's here. I'm sorry, and I feel bad for them, but like, just adapt and move. You have to. You have to.
Your New Zealand Order of Merit, which is, I'm sure you've been congratulated about that a million times.
Yep.
Congratulations on that. I'm thinking, and I don't know why I thought about Kobe Bryant, but I thought about Kobe Bryant and his Oscar. Winning an award, I don't know if winning is the right word for New Zealand Order of Merit, being presented with a you know, an award, whatever the correct terminology is, that's sort of outside your industry. Does that carry more weight? Like, it would be obvious for you to win music awards. You know, it'd be obvious that's an obvious line of connection for you. But a New Zealand Order of Merit, how did that feel? And does that have more weight than within industry awards?
It actually doesn't carry a lot of weight with me.
Okay.
So let me explain. Well, it means a lot for me personally, for my parents. I'm very proud of the achievement that I made and the how people around me within the industry got me the certification I appreciate it, and I love it. And I love the look on my mother's face and my father's face when they talk about it. I will love the look on my children's face as they recognize it as they grow older. But personally, there's a little part of me that has always been at odds with the crown, being a Maori.
Right, of course.
So a little part of me has always felt weird about it. However, I don't ever want to diminish what it means to other people. So I appreciate it and I like it, and it's got some place within my life, but it's I've never actually talked about this. I'm glad that you asked the question, because it's quite hard for me to talk about, because it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and in order for me to gain this award, meant a lot of people had to co-sign me. A lot of people, really important people in my life, but no one probably understood, or even to this day understands in my head, in the background, I'm thinking about my life as a Maori in 2021 and what it means, and how much just distrust there is in the crown. But that doesn't diminish what I've done. Do you know what I'm saying? So for me, it's a real struggle. I mean, I've been meaning to talk to DLT about it, because I wonder what Daryl thinks, because Daryl, we've been at odds with each other for many years, and then we've recently connected properly. And I'd just be interested to see what he thought about it, to put it into perspective for myself, because I do know I have put in a lot of work in the industry, and I never did it. I didn't do anything in this industry to get that. Do you know what I mean? I never was like, oh, I want to get this so I can get a tui, because I can't get a tui. I'm not really an artist, or something like that. But inevitably, I've ended up in the spot, and I've got this award, and I'm very grateful, and I'm glad what it means to my family, because it does mean a lot to my family. But personally, I'm just a little bit at odds with it, which is interesting. I never thought that.
It's not an uncommon thing. I've asked this question of people who have got knighthoods and stuff before, and often, not all the time, but often they say, I'm accepting it on behalf of all the people who I worked with. In other words, me getting this knighthood XYZ actually speaks to all those people who I've been working in this, if it was a charitable thing, for so long, and actually it's actually significantly it actually shows to the work they've done as well. So I get it. What you're saying is a similar comment to what I've heard before. If you're open to it, tell me about the DLT thing. You're saying you're at odds with DLT. What happened there?
We man, this is a good interview. Haven't been asked some of these questions before. I think Daryl and I are different people. We are very different people. When you were experiencing us either on Recognize, on True School TV, or because Daryl and I were a team. Like I worked on the Change project, even though I didn't like the song that much. I worked on it, and I was given an award for that, which I really I value. It's real important to me. But Daryl was always, he's a true activist, and I wasn't. Yeah. I'm way more passive. I just am, bro. I'm not. And by the way, I'm a real worker too. So while you're out there protesting, I'm like in here just getting shit done, and that's just who I am. Like, it wasn't intentional. So through the years of us working together in hip hop, he was frequently pushing an agenda, which ironically I'm far more interested in 2021 than I was in 2000. So I'm just being completely honest with you. And at the time, I felt like it was a distraction. Plus, I always felt incredibly submissive to Daryl, because he was a far stronger character than I was. So when I started at I felt like he was slighting me on a few places, which I called him out about. And then in true classic DJ Sir-vere fashion, if we're not on the same page, I just don't fuck with you, bro. You can ask multiple artists. They're like, oh, Sir-vere fucking doesn't like me. I said, no, I don't not like you. I just can't be fucked. So I literally move on. People often get that wrong about me. They go, oh, Sir-vere's out here fucking not playing our song. I'm like, I'm not thinking about you, bro. Like, I have so much shit to do. I've got 4 children. I don't have time to worry about a DJ who thinks. So there's been DJs who go, that guy's blacklisting me. I've never blacklisted anybody in my fucking life. I just don't care. Like, I'm doing so much other shit.
You got enough going on.
And that's not me being a hero. I'm just telling you, I'm busy, bro. I've got the My FM job, which takes like heaps of my time. I'm working for in music. I work for do some stuff for Live Nation. I got heaps of shit going on. I'm not sitting here going, yeah, there's this DJ. What am I? I'm not think that is not happening. Like that's not happening. So with me and Daryl, we distanced ourselves. But what I forgot was that we have such a deep, rich history through the True School, all these incredible years, that when I did the podcast, and the podcast has been incredibly therapeutic for lots of people, bro. Like,
oh, cool.
Dei Hamo, the Feel Style, Cos, most importantly, TP, Dean Harbitter, DLT, they all got to tell their story. They got to tell the real story. I feel like they've told, this is their moment to tell their story. If they didn't tell like they wanted to, then that was their opportunity, because this is the time. Now, in the process of it, me and Daryl finally reconnected, and I flew up to Hastings and sat with him for a few hours, and it was fucking amazing, bro. And like, it just reminded me that the annoying parts of him were actually the parts that I really loved about him. Do you know what I mean? Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we reconnected real heavy, and I wouldn't say we're in constant contact, but I love talking to him, being around him again. I realized that there were things that we did in our timeline at the time I felt really uncomfortable about, like one of my proudest moments now. Like, for instance, when we did True School TV on Max TV, this is way back in the days, it was
Max, yep.
Groundbreaking, man. On that show, we did a political broadcast for Tami Iti. Like, Tami Iti came on and did a political broadcast on our show. I was standing there DJing. Daryl was standing there with his fucking tire, and Tami was fucking spitting some shit. Like, with the movie that's coming out soon, like, I feel super proud of that. At the time, I was like, so conservative. I was like, I didn't say shit, because Daryl's such a powerful figure. Daryl's like steamrolling right over the top of me going, we're fucking doing this. And I'm like, okay. and at the time, it was like, I felt so submissive. But in recent times, like, Daryl sent me this amazing message, which I won't share with you, but I was like, I realized that we're a fucking team, you know? And through all those years that you will hear on the podcast, we were in the trenches together doing that shit. I was just a little bit of a coward. I was scared of what was happening. He was not scared at all.
But I mean, but even that Max TV example you just gave, I mean, without you, even if you were, had your mouth shut in the background, it wouldn't have happened without you. So it seems like a team to me.
Well, I learned this now.
Yeah.
In 2021 is when I learned it. I was today years old when Daryl told me this shit, because he literally told me that shit. You'll hear it in the podcast.
Yeah, cool.
In the podcast later on, he says some shit that I was literally sitting there trying to hold the tears back and taking a deep swallow, because I had no idea he felt that way. So that's why the importance of something like this, we Martin, myself, and the team at Rova have really, we're treating it as the tangla that it truly is. You know what I'm saying?
I'm interested in you said that the issues that Daryl was talking about back then, you have more interest in now. You also seem to show a little bit of uncomfortableness around your Order of New Zealand, the Merit. Those are some of the issues that are tied in together with what you're more interested in now that he was railing on back then?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Crown stuff.
Yeah. Well, look, if Dean was yelling at me 150 years of oppression for Māoris back then, I was like, oh, that's cool lyric. But I didn't really understand it. It wasn't until Tami Iti invited myself, Shefu, Damn Native, and DLT and a bunch of other hip hop artists to go down to Taniata, where we visited the Māori embassy. We stayed on the marae, and Tami ran down like, this is the fucking deal. And I sat there, and at the time I wasn't ready to take it in, but I was there. Like, not long after that was when that whole fucking terrorist shit came out. Like,
yeah, right.
That was completely false by the Crown. It was all fabricated, apart
the
from
Yeah.
And there's a movie and shit coming out about it. That was around that time. We were down in Taniatua. Like, we were welcomed onto the marae with Tami brandishing a fucking shotgun. Like, there was for Daryl, I believe, looking back on it now, he was cool with it. But that's the part. Ironically, I full circled, and I'm at the point now where I'm very grateful for what he dragged me into and what we achieved in those times, but I just didn't realize it. I didn't know, man, because I'm the working guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think age, full stop, could have something to do with it? Because I know for me, what I reflect on today as a fucking old man, is very different from what I wanted to do and reflect on in my 20s. You know, I guess I say I have the luxury or the privilege to sit sometimes and think. You know, when you're young and you're grinding and you're trying to do things, sometimes you don't have time to stop and think. But I now can do that. Do you think just purely age is one of the things that's enabled you to get back to that place where, you know, DLT was 20 years ago?
Yes and no. I think that the actual difference between me and Daryl is our upbringing. So even though I was raised with somewhat of a solo mother, I did see my dad, but I didn't live with him. Is that mum provided a great environment for me to exist in when I was younger. Daryl didn't. Like Daryl was raised, as you'll find out in the podcast, like he was being chased by rednecks and Maori Bank and Upper Hutt trying to beat the shit out of him because he was brown. I didn't experience that. I was experiencing real casual racism when I was younger that I realize now wasn't fucking cool. But I was the guy who would go, cool, this is what I'm doing. I'm just going to get there. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get there. So it's kind of like, yes, I'm more aware of my surroundings now. Yes, I have more of a deeper understanding of what we were going through and I have time for it. But I also didn't have the hard times that a lot of these people did.
Yeah. I do have a question for you. I want to ask you. It's more of a, I guess, topically based question. You may or may not have an opinion on it. You're completely and utterly free to say, I don't know. But there's a lot of news at the moment around Travis Scott and Astroworld going on. I've got some video playing in the background if people are watching us. I won't put any sound on it though, so we don't get pulled off YouTube. Do you know what's been going on here? Have you been keeping an eye on it? Do you have any thoughts around what's happening with the Travis Scott Astroworld situation?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And it's because I went to Astroworld. I mean, I'm a huge Travis Scott fan. Like I said to you earlier, like I'm really invested in new artists. Travis Scott, most of them, he's like one of my favorites. So I was watching as that all went down, was really shocked as a parent to possibly consider one of my kids being at something like that.
Right.
So yeah, like myself and my wife were contemplating going to that festival this year, but of course COVID meant that we couldn't go. So this shit is really is the worst possible situation. I work very closely with Live Nation, Mark Kneebone especially at Live Nation. So I've had chats with him about how bad this shit was, and I truly believe that the results of this going to reverberate for years from what happened there. What I will say is, having been to a lot of these festivals and having been to Astroworld, the first one, I went to the inaugural one, is that it's not Travis Scott's job to stop that festival. It's the fucking fire marshal. So I don't know what the hell happened where the paramedics weren't saying to the fire marshal, stop the fucking festival. Like they're all on comms. And if what should have happened was, on comms, they should have gone, stop the festival, turn all the lights on, stop the music, and then dealt with what was happening. I've heard all kinds of bullshit things like, oh, it would have started a riot. No, it wouldn't have, man, because everyone was there to see Travis. If you had to stop the festival, people weren't going to run away. They're going to just stay there, communicate to Travis to go, oh, some shit's happening. Some people have been injured. Let's sort it out, then start up again. But that didn't happen. So I don't know. What I do know is that everyone's going to associate Travis as Astroworld. It's his festival. So everyone thinks it's Travis's fault. I think that I understand why people associate him with it because it's called Travis Scott's Astroworld. It is what it is. Yeah. I would be going, where's the fire marshal? Because he's the guy's in control of it. In fact, I've seen the document about who can stop the festival. 2 people, the festival organizer, and I believe it's the fire marshal, fire and safety person. They're the 2 people that can, no one's talking about them. They're all talking about Travis Scott. And by the way, one thing I'm hearing a lot is people shouting at Travis, he's wearing fucking in-ears. I don't know if people don't know about when you're at a festival, when you're an artist, you got in-ears. You can't hear shit around, not really, because it's all feeding back to you through your ears.
Yeah.
So I guess he's going to be blamed for a lot of it. I think it's really fucking sad. I think that Rolling Loud have got a really good system where it's broken up into tiers of sections. And when I was there, I always thought, this is kind of fucked because people should be able to get close to the artist, but fuck, now I know why. It's tragic, man. It's really tragic. It's real sad.
I've experienced it once, and you know, I'm 6'4", You know, my playing weight was about 120 kilos. I'm a big dude, you know, but heavier than that now. The old age is catching up. But I was at the words just jumped out of my head. You know, the concert at Mount Smart Stadium with two stages out the back. Big day out. Sorry, just jumped out of my head. And they had Rammstein on one of the stages, and Limp Bizkit was about to play on the other stage. And I wanted to see Limp Bizkit. Rapcore was a bit of a thing, you know. I enjoyed it. Obviously, it flowed through from that hip hop era. And I was I was standing in front of like maybe center stage for Limp Bizkit. Rammstein was still playing. I was probably 50 meters back. Rammstein finishes. Of course, what happens is all of Rammstein's fans start going like this across to get in front of the Limp Bizkit. I was picked up off my feet, pushed back on a 45-degree angle for about 30 meters, and ended up being turned around and facing the opposite direction. And I could do fucking nothing. You know, we sometimes think, like I often think about swimming. I was a very good swimmer when I was younger. I'm like, oh, you know, I'd never drown. You know, a wave comes up, I just swim sideways. But it's not until you put in a situation where if I had have gone down then, there is no way anyone could have gone, whoops, stop. They would have just kept on coming. There was no way. So whilst I've never been in a situation like that, and I'm not trying to say this like make my experience sound like anyone's there, it's terrifying. It's terrifying the crush that happens when a crush happens properly. You know, to pick me up and all the people with me, drive me back, spin me, like it spun me around. Like I couldn't do anything. I was ended up facing the wrong way. And then, of course, everyone kind of settled down and spread a little bit, and it was okay. But in that moment, I was like, holy shit, this could be a lot scarier than it really is.
Yeah, look, it happened at Rolling Loud because they didn't, the first day at Rolling Loud, this big festival in America, I've been to a lot of them, there was this thoroughfare that connected the stages, and they didn't quite get the setup right. I ended up in the middle of it, and the same thing happened to me. The most terrifying thing, especially reflecting on the Astroworld experience, is the lack of control of your body, is that you literally have, it's going to fucking happen.
Yeah.
I do think, me and Martin talked about this too. The writer of the podcast, is punk crowds pick each other up because they're used to it. They're fucking used to it. Punk crowds are used to mosh pits. Modern day people, modern day kids are not that experienced at this shit, because what's supposed to happen when a mosh pit happens and you cuck over, everyone helps each other up. They're not used to this sort of shit. Like I'm sure there was, and I've seen the footage, and I've been to Astroworld, I've seen it. There's heaps of 19-year-old crazy Caucasian kids that go charging into these things, haven't been into them before. So when it collapses, they don't really understand what you're supposed to do is link arms and get everyone back up. They don't know that. Like you don't know that you've been in one. So I believe that's kind of what happened here, is that there was this thing happened. No one knew how to control it. Plus the size of the crowd was like, that thing's enormous. Like it's huge, massive. So it's just very sad, bro. Like I as a parent, I just think about the prospect of my child going to something like that and never coming back is almost too much to bear. I just can't understand.
I also wonder the difference between American and European crowds. I heard Dave Grohl talking about, he wrote one of his songs and he says American crowds crash into each other. They make a mosh pit where they run into each other, but European crowds bounce. And so on his back and forth documentary, he talks about writing a song in Europe, timing it with the bounce. He plays the guitar while he's bouncing, and then they used it to open for the European tour, and the crowd starts bouncing, they go crazy. So I wonder if there's a bit of a culture in America as well. If they have a culture of mosh pit of running into each other, then that just obviously doesn't help the situation with falling over each other as well.
No, it doesn't, but it doesn't also speak to what happened. But I will say this, is that Travis is such a captivating character. If he knew and stopped the concert and all the lights went on, they would have done what he said. But that's why I keep talking back to the people in control of the festival. It never happened. So that shit can never happen again. It's going to reverberate for years. It's really going to be a thing from here on in.
Well, Mr. Bell, it's been a lot of fun talking to you. I'm going to ask you one more question about, it looks like something that you are involved with. In fact, what I want to do is play a little advert first, and then I want you to tell us about this. This is actually hot off the press, as they say. I think it was had an embargo on it till yesterday. So let's play this advert that you're involved with talking of movements, and then we'll have a quick chat about it. You can tell us all about it.
Kia ora, Aotearoa.
Been a rough couple of months, eh?
Yep, it sucked.
But at least summer's coming.
And you know what summer means?
Music. Live music.
And if every gig looked like this,
it's going to make stage diving really weird.
It'll make my job easier.
here you go.
Think of an Aotearoa summer without music.
Live music brings us together.
Tō ururau mati.
Tō ururau mati.
Have yours?
Tō ururau mati, and have yours. It's talking about vaccination. It's talking about opening up summer to people by being vaccinated. It's a bunch of empty venues that are going to have artists. I'm not sure if it's performing in or speaking from to encourage vaccination. That's my understanding. Have I got it right? You want to just talk to being involved with that?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's a pretty touchy subject at present, is it not? Yeah, it's about like there is clearly going to be a passport for summer. That is an encouragement. Now that is specifically from a Maori perspective. I mean, I really hate how Maori been victimized in this particular instance about our vaccination rates, etc. Now I think that because it's really easy to bash Maoris, like it's fucking real simple in 2021.
It's a national sport, bro.
It's a national sport, and there's certain MPs that fucking have made it their key sport.
Yeah.
And a part of it, that's the reason I was interested in being part of it, because I felt like it was important to me. I felt like I've had this conversation online and people have really come at me, and that's fine. I get it. You know, it's a polarizing subject. However, that piece of work is like-minded individuals. So I felt real comfortable being myself within the vicinity of those people like Troy Kingi, who's like my hero. Logan from A Catch a Fire, who is I'm actually related to him. And some other great, and also some really amazing female artists too. So we just wanted to get back to work. Felt like we have very little choice. But I also, because Tex said something really poignant recently that really, it hit me real hard. He said, just because we're pro-vaccinations means we're not, doesn't mean we're not pro-choice. It's like, stop. I think the tweet said, stop making shit up. That part of it was really important to me, because it seems like if you are having something like this, you're not allowed to have that opinion. This is fucking weird. In 2021, it's really strange. Like, all of a sudden, you're not allowed to have an opinion. You are allowed to have an opinion. It's very strange for us as artists. So that was an artist directive. It's like, we just don't have any work. Like, it's not going to happen at all. So for instance, now this is a real interesting part for me as I internalized it, is what if that was a bunch of school kids or teachers? What if it was a bunch of teachers saying the same type of thing? Because they don't have a fucking choice either. Do you understand what I'm saying? So teachers have to be vaccinated as well, correct? So if teachers went and said that message, no one would probably say shit, because they're going to lose their jobs. We're in the same position, but yet whenever I say anything, it's just this fucking full-on wave of hate. So one, you know, look, I don't even really know how to explain it, but literally, I felt real comfortable being able to say that this is the world we're currently living in. This passport thing is a real thing. We as artists have banded together because this is how we feel about it. We're all inherently in the same fucking basket. So, because here's another really, we all had to internalize this ourselves as people, as human beings. So I'm like sitting here going, okay, so if I don't get vaccinated, I can't work at all, which is a real fucking problem with your 4 children, bro. Like, that's a real issue. It's really a massive issue. I also understand that it's a choice for me. So I've made my choice. I'm like Israel Adesanya. It's none of your fucking business what my choice is, but it's pretty obvious because I'm in the public eye. And when I DJ at a gig, clearly I'm vaccinated, right?
Yeah.
It's my choice. Like, Israel, I love Israel because he's like, it's none of your fucking business, but you know, you will discover, because we're in the public eye. It is what it is. Me, Kings, Real Hall, blah, 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 you name it. It's pretty obvious that where we are in this puzzle. So I'm like, well, that's cool because I felt supported, a high level of camaraderie amongst my fellow Maori artists. You know, like there's people in that ad that I love those people. They're my peers. I have working relationships with them, and I love them. Like they're really important to me, and we're all on the same page. I felt like that was an environment that I felt comfortable to express how I felt. You know, we all have our own opinions. Like I had someone yelling at me the other day, going, "I'm not going to homegrown because they're like this." I'm like, well, then don't. Like, fuck, I don't know what to say to you, but then don't. However, when I talked to Troy Kingi, and he feels the same way that I do, I feel supported by him, and I feel like we're just getting across where we're at. I'm also acutely aware of there's tons of Māori that are making clear and open choices, but it's real easy to fucking bash us, man. Like, I'm sick of that shit. I'm sick of that shit on so many levels, whether it be politics or the vote, or, you know, people love to go straight there because it's real easy to trigger people like me. And I'm just doing, this is the best I can do. This is the best and most coherent I can be about having my personal choice and being able to communicate it. So I feel real comfortable within that team of people, beautiful people, man.
I think that I like what you're saying, and I agree with not bashing people. And I think that what you guys are doing on the website that I was just showing, etc., that's all the information. I'm a firm believer, and it's not just about this, it's about all sorts of things, about, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So giving people the information for them to then make up their own mind is as much as any person can do. I like what you're saying about not bashing people, etc., etc. I just hope everyone can participate in that, because similarly, the people who are making the choice to get vaccinated are being attacked by the people who aren't making the choice. So it's like, if everyone can chill the fuck out, like, you've got a choice, make your choice, and then let's get on with life. And if your choice means you don't get to go to the festivals, then that's the choice you make. If the choice means you can go to the festivals, then that's the choice you make. Everyone can choose their own path. Let's just get on with it now.
Well, look, one part I do understand about that is that I hear loud and clear I shouldn't have to choose. I get that. It's a very good, very difficult position for me, because I don't trust the crown either. I just don't, bro. Yep. I just don't. As I've grown older, I've got clarity about it. They stole that land, 100 and something years ago. So there is that. People don't make that fucking connection. You can't expect my father. Like, this is if you want to hear the fucking realness, my father is in Papakura, who has conditions that could be compromised by COVID. He was beaten at high school for speaking Māori. He told me, he goes, when we went to high school in Pataru, they used to beat the shit out of us for speaking Māori. So we weren't allowed to. How the fuck is he supposed to reconcile that the Crown are trying to give him a vaccination against a deadly disease, but it's the same people that did that? That's really hard to bridge that gap. But also understand this, and this is one thing I'm so glad that you gave me a platform to say that. I can't see my fucking father. I'm currently not able to see him. So what the fuck am I supposed to do, bro? What is he supposed to do? So don't fucking tell me shit about not getting vaccinated when I can't go and see my elderly father, who, by the way, is not well and is deciding to get vaccinated. So I'm not hearing that shit at all. So I'm really thankful for you for letting me say that, because I have not said that in public yet. But you want grim realities? How about you don't go and reveal I can't see my father? It's two completely fucking different things. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? So that's the choice that I've made. Yeah. Yeah,
totally. And it's like a situation, because I used to do talkback on ZB, and I was a bit of a young upstart, and I'd hear stories like that, and people phoning up saying that they got, beaten in the 1950s for speaking Māori, for speaking their native tongue at school and that kind of stuff. And so it's not an uncommon story to have heard. It's a tragic story to have heard every time. I've kind of this philosophy of, there's this thing we have in life where we shouldn't have to do things, but sometimes we do, or we should be allowed to do things, but sometimes society and the way we operate as human beings don't let us. And I always use the example, I should be able to, have $10,000 in each hand and run naked down the most dangerous street in whatever city I'm living in, but I know from a safety point of view that I should be able to do that and be safe, but it's also a decision I probably shouldn't make because it's unlikely to go my way. And I think we all face decisions at all times in our lives. They're the things we should be able to do or not do, but the way that society is, for good and bad, sometimes channels what is best for me and for all of us. And this feels a bit like one of those. I mean, I'm vaccinated. My kids are vaccinated. I think there's nothing wrong with it, but I also completely understand and experienced, especially when I was on ZB, speaking to a bunch of typically old redneck white people, that there's a history here that you need to get through. And I used to explain it to them. That's like, if you as a child had been wronged by, person X, would you still trust them today? No. Okay. Well, if your father had been wronged by person X, would you have distrust of them? No. Yeah, I still have distrust of them. Well, if your grandfather had been wronged by person X, would you still have distrust of them? And they said probably yes. And I'm like, well, now we're talking that on a mass scale to a group of people, to a institutional thing that have been wronged only 2 generations ago, their grandparents or even parents, and you're just now going, everything's fine. Let's just look forward and start from now. But that's not the world we live in. We don't live in a world where things that have happened to us, our parents, or even our grandparents, or even before that, are so easily just wiped away and said, okay, let's call it even now and move forward. It doesn't work that way in reality.
No, it doesn't. And what I do fully respect is people that are protesting against what would appear to be their rights taken away from them. I actually understand that. We just have a difference of opinion. That's what I get that.
Yeah,
I get that. So we're making a choice. You have one opinion, they have. I get that, but I'm not seeing that. There's certain people that I talk to. I'm not fucking seeing. I'm sorry. I don't believe that's their motivation. But for the people that are protesting about pro-choice, I do understand that for sure.
I think that it's an academic thing, because I can hear that academically, like intellectually, and go, I understand that. But we face it every day. I have a choice to drive 100 kilometers down the road if I want to, but I might have some of my freedoms taken away from me if I get pulled over by the police, or I might face a punitive punishment. I have the choice to hit someone. I could have that choice. It's a free choice, but there may be some of my freedoms taken away. If I work in a space that has a dress code, I have the choice to dress however I want, but it might involve me losing my job in the long run. So, and I know that when you're talking about putting something in your body, it's not an even parallel. So I'm not saying it, but what I am saying is we all face choices every single day of the week, month, year, that we could choose to do something as a freedom statement, but there may be a consequence of freedoms taken away after it. So I get it intellectually and I get the argument, but I also understand once again how society works and how we have chosen to live as a society en masse, not everyone, but en masse, is sometimes those choices are channeled. I won't say forced, but channeled, and they have consequences that come with them. You have the right to not be vaccinated. You can make that choice. It is a choice. No one's forcing. No one's got a gun to your head and putting a needle in your arm. But if you choose not to, there are some consequences that come with it, and some of those are.
I agree, and I don't think parts of that are not fair, and that's the reason why I believe that people are up in arms about it. And I get it. We're just communicating that we've made our choice and we've got to get back to work, and this is what we're doing. It's an unfortunate fucking reality, and some people can understand it, some people can't. Just is what it is, man.
Let us have a look at Friday the 19th. Where's my page? I was trying to bring up your page. Oh, there it is. There. Friday the 19th. Rova. For people who want to know what Rova is, get it through, I guess, Google Store, Apple Store. It's an app. It's the on-demand app, and it's also the place if you want to listen to MediaWorks radio stations. I think all their live feeds are on there as well. So Rova original podcast, Aotearoa Hip Hop, the music, the people, the history. I like the voiceover. Is that Mario? Is the voiceover one of the voiceover guys Mario? No, and maybe it's not. I was just thinking maybe
I do all the voicing on it. It depends which bit you heard. I mean, Mareko does. Sorry, you mean at the very, very beginning?
Yeah.
It's Mareko from the Decepticonz. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's one person that when you hear him rap, I mean, I don't know if this makes sense, but he sounds like an international voice. When some people rap, they sound like a Kiwi. When he raps, you're like that. He could be from any country in the world. He's got that vibe to him. He's got an amazing voice.
Yeah, no, it's the best ever, or the best ever thing always comes up. I mean, I've talked about the most important, which is Scribe, but the best ever is subjective. I think that flows from Foot Soldiers is one of the greatest. I think Mareko, Savage are all great, but it's subjective to who you are, where you're from, where you live. We're caught off in a huge part of it. But yeah, I'm real proud of this podcast. It's been such a labor of love. COVID has been so difficult to navigate through this process, but here we are.
So 19th of November, people can download it off Rova. First 6 episodes will be there. I've heard the first 1.5 of them. I can, as someone who grew up, I'll say not maybe not in the culture, but certainly enjoying the culture, enjoying the music of it. Loved it, loved every minute of it so far. I'm very keen to see and I'll hear the rest of them. But also, if you like history, this is, as you say, is an anthology. It's a historical document. If you like to learn why this genre of music is where it is today and where it came from, if you're basically a music lover, if you're a history lover, if you're a hip hop lover, it's going to be there for everybody. It's the 19th of November on Rova Original Podcasts. And DJ Sir-vere, this has been a huge honor and a great amount of fun. And I thank you so much for coming on. And, anytime you want to come and chat. My door's always open. Anytime you've got interviews, if you've got interviews with people down in Dunedin, you come and use my studio and use this for the next series of your podcasts. And it's been a blast, bro. I was going to say, I'm glad to see we're both wearing hip hop uniforms. Both got black hoodies on at the moment. I think that was.
My wife's always at me. So I got a wardrobe full of black clothing. Just pretty normal.
Good luck with the release of the podcast. It's amazing. It's going to do amazing things. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Kia ora, bro.